Hey everyone, it's Pittico from Rock Daydream Nation, and look who's back to the channel. Welcome back, Melissa Nee. How's it going?
Thanks for having me. It's going great.
I think this band, this in my opinion, is their greatest album, and they went through a lot of different sort of sonic changes. For a brief period of time, this band was actually, writing about social commentary, which was happening in their country. And I'm talking about Judas Priest and British Steel. So, a song like Breaking the Law was, you look at the lyrics of that, that's very much about the politics of the day, Thatcher England, unemployment, Rob Halford being very sort of autobiographical about what was happening in his world, just looking around. And, this is a different sort of priest to, when they were talking, about turbo lovers and
Very different.
whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
the arena rock of screaming for vengeance.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I really get the feel that this album was they were really sort of, there seemed to be a hunger, and it's a very British sounding album, and they're talking about topics that were just very much. I only think that a British metal band could have written. To me, I just think this is the greatest album for Judas Priest. Breaking the Law, Living After Midnight. What do you think of this album?
I love this album. I did not see this tour. I didn't see them till the following tour. But here's a band that, and we'll probably talk about another band who's in a similar situation of this, who had been around for a minute, but was able to kind of ride that crest of the new wave of British heavy metal and kind of jump on that, I don't say bandwagon, but kind of like use that vehicle to help move their music along, because they predated new wave of British heavy metal, but they definitely, and a lot of people do consider them a new wave of British heavy metal band because of British Steel coming out in 1980 and the classic songs that are on that album. And their songs, I know a lot of people don't like Living After Midnight, and a lot of people don't like Breaking the Law. They're sick of hearing them and blah, 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 blah. That's the stuff that's on the radio, that's still on the radio in 2026. That's what you're going to hear. So it has definitely stood the test of time. The other thing about Judas Priest is when you get to British Steel, this is where they have absolutely planted their flag. Metal. They're metal. They're not going to apologize for it. They're going to wave the flag for it. They're going to support it. They're going to cry it from the rooftop. Unlike bands like Def Leppard, they are 100% all in being a metal band. And you were able to identify with them as somebody who was an emerging metalhead. It was like, yeah, these people they get it, they get me, they get my kind. And so that's a very important album for me. Very important album. And the other thing that that album did was, because it did so well, like so many other bands, they were like AC/DC, for example, they were able to go, people went back. People went, oh, these people, this isn't their first album. Let's see what happened in the 70s. Let's see what, and discover, Sad Wings and Stay in Class and those amazing albums and those amazing songs that are on those albums. So pivotal album.
Yeah, I think this is the last album that they made that was decidedly British, because I think
Yes.
after this, their sound became more influenced and indexed by their experience in America. Like Point of Entry, heading to the highway, it was sort of like the great open desert plains.
Right. Right.
Rob's talking about the experiences of touring America, and Screaming for Vengeance is definitely an American arena rock album. Defenders of the Faith, even that step further. But I think this is the last album. Just ignore the title, calling British Steel. Only a British band could have written this. Like even United, you listen to that song, to me it's like a soccer chant.
It is. It is absolutely.
It's sort of like, this is a song that you'd hear at Manchester United or the Chelsea fans would be singing. No American band could write a song like that, but turn it into a heavy metal stomper. Rapid Fire is one of, I know it's a different track listing in America, but that's one of the greatest opening tracks. And it's got that really aggressive, kind of almost punky delivery. It's really spiky and it's just in your face. Steeler, one of the great closing tracks of all time. And, you know, that the outro where the guitars just do this rolling riff. No American band could do this. It's just decidedly English.
It is very
And
English.
by calling it British Steel and putting the iconic razor blade in the front just reinforces it. So I think, yep, they're a much older band. They didn't rise, they didn't sort of ride in on the coattails of new wave of British heavy metal. I think it was, they just were right in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think
And
they rode the wave. The wave was
mm,
coming through, and the thing is that if you're in America and you're looking at the new wave of British heavy metal,
mm,
um, Judas Priest, they don't. A lot of people didn't necessarily know that they had anything prior. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
They didn't really know the history.
yeah.
They kind of like, oh, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Saxon. You know what I mean? Like there's a list of the British
Mm.
bands. And so I didn't mean ride on the coattails in a bad way at
No, no,
all.
no.
I mean, I
I
think that
understand.
they were able to get on that tide, and I mean, it, it was for their betterment, that they were kind of lumped into the new wave of British heavy metal. It helped them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Another band that's very close and dear to my heart, and is David Coverdale and Whitesnake. They released two albums in 1980. I think they had finally were able to put out albums that really reflected the live sound of Whitesnake. So, the first two albums, Trouble and Love Hunter, there's some there's some good songs, but the production from Martin Birch was quite disappointing. It seemed a little bit hollow. Just didn't really sort of capture the organic live sound and the energy. The album Ready and Willing is where I think David Coverdale, they started to not only they put good songs on the album, but the production seemed to match the energy of those songs. Fool for Your Loving, great song. Ready and Willing, Carry Your Load, Ain't Gonna Cry No More, Love Man. This was a bit of a smash in the UK. Didn't really trouble the charts in America because that took to 1987, but I'm just putting it out there, especially for our UK audience. 1980 or 81 is where it was the peak year of David Coverdale's voice. He had this wonderful bluesy, soulful voice, and I don't think he ever, on record at least, was as good as Ready and Willing. And definitely, I think 1980 was a stellar year.
I
We
think
probably,
that they didn't do brisk business in the U.S. This was again one of those if you're over about the import bin, you heard about the guy from Deep Purple had a new band, and so this
mm,
is kind of when I first heard Whitesnake. But
yeah,
you're right. I mean, they didn't really get airplay. They didn't really do any kind of business in the US. It really was if you were aware of the imports, that's how you found out about Whitesnake. Or if you were somebody that was really like a big Deep Purple fan and followed him, then you would know.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, Motorhead, Ace of Spades. 1980 was a very kind year for Motorhead. This is probably peak Motorhead. You got the classic lineup of, Lemmy, Fast Eddie,
Filthy.
Filthy Animal Taylor, the trio. They had a real groove going. It was kind of like dirty, bluesy rock. I've always sort of related this sort of lineup of Motorhead as sped up ZZ Top. No, listen to
Yes,
it.
yes, exactly.
Um, Look,
Exactly.
Ace of Spades is an iconic song. It gets played to this very day. You hear it in commercials now. But this was, you talk about the new wave of British heavy metal. This is another band that were right in the middle of it, and definitely this sort of parachuted them, at least in the UK and the Europe, into the stratosphere. And No Sleep to Hammersmith was a number one album, a live album, albeit. So that was quite unique. But I love this album. What do you think of Motorhead Ace of Spades?
Yeah, and this is the other band that I was alluding to that is an older band, a band that had already kind of been around, but really was able to ride that wave, that new wave of British heavy metal wave, and it sort of helped them along. Ace of Spades is the album that everybody in the U.S., most people in the U.S., really got to know Motorhead. Motorhead, another band that is not metal, metal adjacent, and Lemmy famously does not like being did not like being considered a metal band. And but they were definitely a band that metalheads could get behind. And the thing about Motorhead that I remember like from Ace of Spades is that my punk friends liked it and my metal friends liked it. So they kind of
Crossover, crossover.
they did a really good job of kind of covering all the bases. It's their kind of their magnum opus, right? It is peak. There's some peaks and valleys after that, but that this is it. This is the iconic song. This is the iconic album, the iconic lineup, the iconic album cover. It's the total package.
They didn't sort of break into the mainstream of America, even when Lemmy moved to America. Was touring up and down into the new millennium. He was always more of a cult figure. But for a brief moment of time, Motorhead were way in the mainstream, especially in the UK. And this album, Ace of Spades, was right in the thick of it. And definitely, it's an iconic album. There's another band that was very much in the new wave of British heavy metal, and for a brief time, they were going pound for pound if it was a heavyweight boxing match against Iron Maiden. And I'm talking about the lead singer, his name was Biff, and the band was called Saxon. And they had
Yes.
two albums out in 1980, but I'll put a spotlight on the album Wheels of Steel. Now, I've interviewed a couple of folks from Saxon, and I really think this band is getting their long overdue due. You know what I mean? I think they're certainly getting a lot more critical acclaim, and people are actually looking back at those early albums and thinking, gee, they were really good, and they probably should have got more recognition than they deserved. As I said, they were, right up there with Iron Maiden, but probably a few bad business decisions and a few duff albums, and they went into a bit of a slump that they didn't quite recover. But those early albums, like Wheels of Steel, right up in the charts, I think near number one, and they were on top of the pops, and they did really well. What do you think of Saxon?
So I love Saxon. So this is another import bin band for me. This is another new wave of British heavy metal find for me. They did not do much business in the U.S. Part of it is because they didn't have the advantage of somebody like Rod Smallwood.
Yes.
So that made a huge difference. It is too bad. They also, after, as we got into the later 80s, they kind of chased some trends where Iron Maiden kind of didn't. They kind of just kind of stayed the course. And I think that chasing trends kind of hurt them.
Innocence is no excuse was a bad decision.
It was a very
Yeah.
no excuse for that. But yeah, so there was some bad decisions, and it is too bad because they are really good and they are worth being in the conversation of classic new wave of British heavy metal bands. And early on, they did the two albums; they were prolific. There's some great classic songs on that. And their latest couple of albums have been really, really good. So they've kind of righted the ship maybe a little too late, but they are getting a lot more recognition here in the US than they had ever gotten in the 80s. So,
Yeah, I agree. And I think Biff Byford is one of the great vocalists. I've always loved his vocals. He's
me
got
too.
this really sort of edgy tone that really has cut through. And if you're going to talk about your Rob Halfords and your Ronnie James Dio's, like Biff's right up there. He's a gold-plated, heavy metal superstar. But yeah, perhaps yeah, a few bad decisions here and there, and they didn't get the recognition that they deserve. But definitely for 1980, they were right up there and flying the flag for heavy metal. I think there's some other albums I'd like to cover, probably sort of more, I wouldn't call them their greatest works. I think we need to sort of recognize they were right up there in the mix. So Blue Oyster Cult, Cultosaurus erectus, try to say that really fast. Fun band, love this album. Probably kind of getting to the end of their commercial success in America, but they were getting played on radio, and this is a really tasty album. And whether they're heavy metal or not, I always just think they're a rock and roll band. But for the purposes of this show, I want to put a spotlight on that. I know you're a big fan, and we have done a show on
Yes,
Blue
I
Oyster
do. I love
Cult.
them.
So
Again, they're another metal adjacent, another band that's
yeah,
not a metal band, but metalheads do love. Yeah, they're classic, and that's a classic album, and yeah, they're
yep. Michael Schenker Group, the first Michael Schenker album. I've got a soft spot for Gary Barden. I don't think he's the world's greatest vocalist, but boy, when he combines with Michael Schenker, and especially in that group, there's something really special. And Michael Schenker's in that bucket of bands that Peter Kerr has never seen and would love to see. I must be Michael Schenker's biggest internet stalker, because every time he puts a tour out, I go, please, Australia. And he puts a thumbs
Australia.
up, and then nothing.
And then nothing,
Anyway,
yeah.
I love this album, Armed and Ready, Cry for the Nations. You just look at the track listing of this album, and it's basically his song set to this very day. Do you
It
like this
is.
album?
I love this album. I love this album, and I am and was a big UFO fan. So when he left UFO, I was like, oh, what's he gonna do? And then he comes out with this, and it's heavier than UFO. It's more metalish, I guess, or whatever.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I mean, this is a great album. It's interesting that he doesn't come to Australia because isn't his wife Japanese?
yeah, yeah. I
So
just
it's
think
like they're kind of in, that neighborhood. I mean, not that Japan is super close, but it's kind of that end of the world. So it's kind of weird that he doesn't play Australia. But
I know. But
yeah, yeah,
anyway,
great, 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 great. And then, you know, um, Scorpions had an album that year as well.
yes, I was going to talk about that.
Oh,
Animal Magnetism. I love that album. That's really good.
yeah,
Tell
yeah.
us
I love
what do
it.
you like about this album?
So I love that album. As a matter of fact, I used to have a pet sitting business, and I named it Animal Magnetism. So uh, it's a great album. For me, it's kind of like much like the we were talking about Def Leppard sort of bridging. It's kind of a bridge album from the 70s to where they were going in the 80s. You kind of can see the transition. You can kind of see where they're going. So it's a really great
More
album.
stadium rock, because early John Roth, I love the era, the
Yeah.
70s. He
Yeah.
was kind of, he was
He's a Jimi Hendrix guy. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You
the
can kind of
Jimi
see,
Hendrix, a little bit proggy, very European.
and I
But
love, I love it. I love
this,
early.
to me, is a more American sounding. They're refining
Yes.
their sound.
Yep.
It's kind of like their Hello America album, and you can
Exactly.
see that they're heading into that stadium rock.
Exactly.
And there's some
Exactly.
songs here that are just played to this day. The Zoo is probably the one that I'm
My
looking at the
favorite.
song
Yeah.
list. I love Lady Starlight. Klaus sings beautifully. I think the playing's fantastic. And yeah, you had the combo there that was sort of getting a little bit of chemistry, and
Yep.
it's all leading into Love at First Sting.
Yeah,
That's
you can definitely
you
see
can see
the
the road ahead.
and see where they're going. You can see where they've been, and you can see where they're going. It's a nice little, I don't transition album, or you can sort of see what the plan is, and great lineup. And Klaus is another guy who has an amazing voice, and I think that maybe he doesn't get enough recognition. of being
Fantastic
somebody who
voice.
really has an amazing voice.
Absolutely fantastic voice. Let's talk Van Halen. Women and children first. Maybe it's not always spoken about as being top tier Van Halen, but I think anything in the David Lee Roth era, probably with the exception of Diver Down, I'll get hate mail over that, is
No.
probably part of the holy scroll of Eddie Van Halen. And the Cradle Will Rock, Everybody Wants Some, Fools, Romeo Delight, Loss of Control, Take Your Whiskey Home. It's the four of them are on fire, and David Lee Roth, his lyrics are so witty, socially observant. I think they're kind of like at their circa peak, and Eddie's playing was just so inventive. So I like this a lot. The album only goes for 33 minutes and 35 seconds. There's not an inch
Quick
of
in and out.
fat, in and out.
Nope, in and out. And this is my favorite Van Halen album. And this is also the album that, I mean, there was buzz before with them, Eddie Van Halen, and he was getting, write-ups in Cream magazine and Rolling Stone and whatnot. And so he was definitely on everybody's radar and so on and so forth. But this is the album that really saw much more commercial success, much more songs like Cradle Will Rock was on the radio every 5 minutes. It was definitely an album that put them in the spotlight, that got them more mainstream, more eyes on them in the mainstream media, and subsequently that meant that people were going out buying the albums and so on and so forth, and then going back to the earlier stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you. But yeah, look, I love the David Lee Roth era. As I said, with the exception of Diver Down, and I think that's a great album. I want to put a shout out for Thin Lizzy Chinatown. I think this is the last great Thin Lizzy album. A lot of people put shade on this album, probably because they look at this and, he wasn't in the best of health. He could tell he was in the throes of addiction, and he had a lot of demons. But his songwriting and the playing on this album is outstanding. The big song on this album was Killer on the Loose. Terrible film clip, very politically incorrect. Just look at it now and you go, oh, how did they get away with that? But it all the way from top to bottom, this is classic Phil Lynott songwriting, where he's a storyteller. And that's what I like about Phil. Every sort of song that he writes is like a little mini novella. It's like film noir. It's like a pulp fiction. And he does
Right.
these songs about spivs and drug dealers and love gone wrong. And he's just so compelling. I love the way he sings. He kind of, it's not like a crooner, but it's very conversational, and it's like he's talking to you. And I've really got a soft spot for this album, but a lot of people put shade on it. It had the lineup of Scott Gorham, Snowy White, which I think a lot of people were going, oh, I don't know if he fits in, and Brian Downey on drums. He's just sensational. Are you a Thin Lizzy fan? No?
I'm a huge Lizzie fan, and I do like this album. I think that Thunder and Lightning is my favorite, but the thing is, the thing about Phil is I always think of him as kind of a folk singer, right? He's kind of you can see him just kind of like being a singer-songwriter, like a guy, I know he's a bass player, but a guy with a guitar that just sort of telling stories, like you said. Um, and that's kind of what he is. He's kind of like a folk singer with a band behind him. Yeah, this is a great album. And I think it got kind of overlooked in the hard rock and metal community because it wasn't really hard rocking enough. You know what I mean? So a lot of
Yeah.
people dismissed it and went, this is kind of boring. This is kind of lo-fi. This is, without really getting to the meat and potatoes of what it is that Thin Lizzy does and does so well.
Yeah. Oh, well, I like it. I think it's one of my top tier albums, and yeah, I think it's great. So, have you got any others that you'd like to put a shout out?
Yeah, so Police came out with Zindada Mandata, and they were, and I mean everywhere in the US in 1980. I mean, that was where they just sort of came out of the gate swinging. They were on the radio all the time. That was a huge album here in the US. Huge album. I believe it was um I think it was the first time they did a headlining tour in the US. They were here in the late 70s. I didn't see them because they played in a club that was 21 plus and I was still young. Um but they yeah, I mean that's where they really kind of got some attention here in the US. Another album is Pat Benatar had an album out. And this is where she really again sort of got her foot in the door, started to get airplay. And you're seeing, a woman, a front woman up there, because before that it's kind of like, yeah, you kind of had the Runaways, but mainly it was just Heart, and that was kind of it. And she was out there being a badass, and every girl wanted to be Pat Benatar, every guy had the hots for her, and and she had an amazing voice, and she was somebody that could take kind of like an Ann Wilson could take this almost like an operatic voice or whatever and turn it into like hard rock. And then one other album I do want to talk about, and we could talk about a million. I mean, there's so many albums this year. It's just like ridiculous. Is the band Angel Witch. So Martin Popoff has often said, and I agree with him on this, that Angel Witch is the debut album, the first album by Angel Witch that came out in 1980, may be the best new wave of British heavy metal release. And he's not wrong. This album is so iconic because of the influence that it had on so many of our favorites. Slayer, Metallica, on and on and on and on. Everybody loved this band and was influenced by this band. And we talked a little bit about Saxon, how bad choices didn't help their cause. Kind of the same thing with Angel Witch. There was lineup changes, there were some bad decisions made, and unfortunately, they did not capitalize on what they had done on this first album. There's some good stuff that comes down the pipe, but they didn't capture what they had captured on that first album. That first album is lightning in a bottle. And if you guys are not familiar with Angel Witch, go check them out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Mel. This has been fantastic. I think we've had a good range of talking about
Absolutely.
some hard rock in 1980, and I have to agree, it's a stellar year. So one of the best years. But I think we'll talk offline briefly. There might be we might do another one another year.
I got another one
Yeah,
in my
well,
head.
we'll talk offline. We'll keep this a secret.
Sounds
And
good.
but look, I've really enjoyed that. And look, folks, we love reading your comments. Put your comments of what albums that you think in 1980 we missed, and or you want to champion that was stellar in that particular year. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Please listen to Metal Chat.
Metal Chat with
Yeah,
Melissa. I just got the new episode.
absolutely. Our podcast, I'll put the link below. Lots of great shows coming up on Rock Daydream Nation. As I said, stay tuned. More to come. All the best. And once again, thanks, Melissa Nee, for coming on the show.
As always, thank you for having me.
All right. All the best and good night. Cheers.
Cheers.